My name is Leo Roger Gray. I'm a Lieutenant Colonel, United States Air Force Reserve, retired after 41 years of service. There are over 16,000 people who claim to be documented original Tuskegee Airmen. That includes anyone who was assigned to any organization or support organization to which pilots who graduated from Tuskegee Army Airfield were assigned between 1941 and 1949. Of the 932 that graduated, 350 pilots were sent overseas. That 355 were the red tail pilots. And of that number, 80 were killed overseas. 32 were prisoners of war, and another 30 or so went down but evaded capture. They took off and came back on foot. They landed either behind enemy lines or in friendly territory, but they managed to make it back to the base without being captured. Tuskegee Army Airfield was the only military facility in the armed forces that was integrated. And we went down to Eglin Field, Florida, for our gunnery training. As a matter of fact, we were on the way down in buses and we stopped at a little town in Florida to try to get some snacks or something, and we walked into this little convenience store and the guy pulled a gun and said, "We don't serve no niggers here," and we had to leave. So we continued on down to Eglin Field. We couldn't use the officers club, or we couldn't go in the PX to cafeteria or anything like that. They had German prisoners of war down there that had access to the officers club, the PX and everything, but we did not have access to those facilities. It was escorting bombers. We were escorting B-17s or B-24s. And, but we were going over the Alps, and one burst of flak came up out of an outhouse. We call it an outhouse, but there was one burst of flak came up. It went about from here over to that building off my wing. I'm at 25,000 feet. That's pretty close. I'm looking at it, and when you see flak in the movies, it's one thing, but when you see the real stuff, and it's that close to you, when I'm looking at the flak, and I look back, everybody was gone. I said, uh-oh, so I racked my aircraft around to catch up with everybody, and someone said, "Bogey, 6 o'clock, hi." And someone said they dispatched a flight to engage me in combat. I said, "Hey, I'm trying to get back in formation." Everybody started laughing, you know. But anyhow, that was the most exciting thing that happened to me on that particular trip. A week later, when I'm going to Prague to escort this P-38, Prague is just a short distance from Berlin, and we completed the mission. There were 3 of us, and he wanted to go a little further. We said, well, we only had 75-gallon tanks on this mission. And so he said, okay, we'll go a little further. So someone said, "Bogey, 12 o'clock high. Here the 2 German jets had been dispatched to engage us." And these jets came over, they were about 5,000 feet over us. They were flying around in circles. And they came down to about 1,200 feet over. And then they came on the approach to attack. See, they were over about 110 miles an hour faster than we were. And they came on the approach to attack. Well, when they came on the approach to attack, we figured we had a chance to shoot them down, because as they approach, we just do a scissors, go like this, you know, and as they're coming in, you take this evasive action and get on their tail. And when they saw us drop tanks, I think they remembered Berlin, they broke off their attack. That was pretty close. It was interesting because before World War II, the War Department had a publication in 1925 at Carlisle Barracks, Pennsylvania, which came up with the conclusion of Negro troops in World War I. And they said, in essence, that Negroes were inferior to whites. Negroes lacked the intelligence to participate in sophisticated activities, and even if they did, they lacked the bravery to successfully engage in combat. So the mindset of the military establishment was that black men could not fly. And that's how they started the Tuskegee Airmen experiment, to prove that black men could not fly. Well, I think the experience of the 332nd Fighter Group in combat, where we destroyed or damaged 409 enemy aircraft, We destroyed 112 aircraft in aerial combat, and we lost 12 in aerial combat. That's a 10-to-1 kill ratio. That's not bad for guys that are not supposed to be able to fly. Whites to the right, niggers to the left. Same old coming back to the States. When the guys were, I said we had 32 prisoners of war. They were treated better as prisoners of war than they were treated as blacks in this country. And this is what they claim. So it's pretty demoralizing experience to come back and say, hey, you went over there and your buddies shed their blood for this. And we were coming back from Savannah, and we had a transfer point at buses, and we were waiting to get the last bus, and there was a lot of people there. And so the whites started loading, and so if they fill up the bus, there's no place for blacks to get on. And so all the civilians loaded the bus, and then the white enlisted men started to load. And I says, oh, wait a minute, I want the names of every one of you to get on the bus in front of me. And so they stepped back. And so my buddy and I, we got on the bus, and we were able to once we got on the bus, they let enough other blacks get on to fill the back seat. And we were the only ones that got on the bus, and then they finished loading the bus with whites. But that's the way it was in the South. One thing, being a Tuskegee Airman, especially being a pilot, it was a rather rigorous experience because we went through some very serious and strenuous training exercises to become pilots. It built a bonding that we all had the same experience. And unlike with the white pilots, see, when they graduated, they were scattered hither and yon, and some of them never saw each other again. But when we graduated, the ones that the single engine went overseas, they flew the combat missions, and they came back to Tuskegee. We couldn't get away from each other. And so we had to learn to live with each other, and we became a very close-knit group. You have to recognize that this is our country. And my folks were here. My ancestry goes back to, I think it was the 1680, when that was before this was a country. I've got some pretty deep roots here. And it may not have been as nice as I'd like it to be, but my family was here. I didn't want to speak German or Japanese. And so what are we going to do? We're going to defend it because it's our home, just like everybody else is defending it. I mean, you had a lot of racial animosity, not only against blacks, but against the Irish and the Jews and so forth. And this country is a very volatile place. And they're still having problems, but it's better now than it used to be. But this was our country, and so we wanted to fight and defend for it, as we do today. You see, there are a lot of still blacks in the military. Hey, we even have a president, a 1600 Pennsylvania admiral, is only half white.